think of my day-to-day activities and what I do in work, it really starts about the day, how I get up in the morning, how I take care of my personal needs due to my disability. And sometimes there's challenges with that, and sometimes there's not. But I've been doing this for 31 years, so it's kind of my normal. And that's how I go about getting ready for the day. But how I get to work is important, right? And that's really where it comes about public transportation. I constantly on buses and subways to get from point A to point B, having to rely on that system and knowing what works and what doesn't work. So if I'm taking a subway every day, I really got to think about checking, unfortunately, checking those alerts to see if it's working or not. And there's times like the other day, I went to work and the elevator was broken at the other end. So I had to turn around and find another office to work at. Those are frustrating things, but it is part of the process. And then it's my daily stuff. I do a lot of in person at my job, requires a lot of travel at sometimes. I love going to the office. I am a people person. And this new normal with us with Zoom. I remember a time when there wasn't any of this. And you had to be there at 7 o'clock every day ready to go, and things have changed a little bit with that, but I think that's a good flexible work thing for people. I rarely use accommodations, but there are times that I have leveraged that. So for instance, I've just torn my rotator cuff. And right now I'm working 3 days in the office and 2 days at home. And then I'm going to leverage another accommodation when I get my rotator cuff repaired. I'm going to be off for 3 weeks. And for the remaining 12 weeks that I have to be out, I'm going to do work from home. So I've never used them before, but now I see them as a tool to be able to get my job done.
Yeah. Victor, did in the conversation, I think some things that we hear from people are things like, I'm embarrassed to ask for accommodations, or I don't know what to say. Do you have any feedback on that? Like if you had to go to your boss and be like, listen, because I use a wheelchair, I need to be able to work from a different office if the subway's not working. How does that conversation go? And what did you say in those moments?
Yeah, that's real. And I think for many times I didn't never thought about asking for accommodation because something wasn't accessible. I think of some of the areas, but I dealt with it back then. But if we think about accommodation, accommodation happens in so many different ways. How many times do you take an accommodation to go see a doctor? How many times you take accommodation to go take your kid to a soccer game or pick them up at school, right? Those are accommodations and people ask for those and they aren't shy about that. Why should you be shy about asking for a tool that's going to make you succeed in the workplace, like a screen reader or a sign language interpreter or a flex schedule so you can get back and forth to your physical therapy appointments? Those are real. It doesn't mean
Yeah.
you can't do your job. These are just tools that exist to make you enhance what you can do. And that's
Yeah, that,
really about bringing your whole self to work, right? And and
yeah,
that
that's a
and
good
that's not easy off the at first, right? Absolutely not,
yeah.
right? It takes a while to kind of learn that. When you first come into the workplace, the only thing you want to do is show that you can do the job. I didn't know what I was capable of doing. I was a blue collar worker before my injury. That's all I knew. I didn't have a college degree behind me. And I was really fortunate to run into a disabled organization where I met many people through sport and then eventually through working with Eastern Paralyzed Veterans Association. There were people with disabilities there and they were guiding principals in some way, or what I would say mentors, and people that showed me what I can do, not what I couldn't do. So it was kind of comfortable. And I think in reflecting on that, I was very fortunate to be able to meet people like Lorraine Looney, people like Regina
Wonderful.
Stella, right? People like
Yeah,
Jerry
that's wonderful.
Kelly and
Yeah.
Doug Beckley, and Terry Moakley were people with higher disabilities than me, and Terrence Goodman, and just the list goes on of Laura Schwanger, and I think of these are old people that Lorraine and I know pretty well,
Uh,
but you know, it just, you know, I'm just thinking about those names as they come in, and they were just role models, right? And
yeah.
I was fortunate enough to be able to get right into a disabled organization, and then lead from an area of strength, right? Because other people with disabilities were leading there. I didn't have to learn that. I saw it, right? I lived it. So it's
Yeah.
really a different experience. But if it's people coming into the workplace, let's say that are not working in non-disabled jobs, that let's say are working in a law firm or working in a tech field, right? And they're not working on disability specific stuff where people don't need anything, right? They're on
Right.
edge. They're thinking about this. How do I fit in? What's wrong? What's right? And maybe some aren't, but some are. And a lot of people with disabilities are, right? Because generally we're the minority in the room. Yeah, I've have hired people with disabilities, but I think one of the most important thing, and the places where I'll tell you I failed, right? I haven't. There were times where I didn't hire the right person for the job, right? And when you don't hire that right person for the job, and you think they have the qualifications that they don't, that's bad as a whole, right? Because you don't want to hire a person with a disability just to hire a person with a disability. You want to hire that person that's qualified to do the job who just happens to have a disability, right? And we know there are a lot of, we know that disability talent is deep, right? It's about giving that person with a disability a shot. And and how do you do that? Testing people out. Internships are really good. I don't think enough people with disabilities get into internships to be able to drive that, to be able to learn where they can flourish and where they can't. So I think that's has to happen. We have to let people know that people with disabilities existing can work in every field, not just disability related fields, that accommodations aren't so costly and they're easy. And the state VR services put out lots of work initiatives and ways to incentivize people, companies, but a lot of people don't take advantage of it, right? Or there's so many hoops to get through. um, it's challenging. um, but I think the power position is hiring the most qualified person, and doing that, you need to upskill yourself in lots of different ways through certifications, through job interviews, right? If you don't get the interview, I mean, if you get an interview and you don't get the job, that's not the greatest thing, but the practice of the interview absolutely helps, right? And then reflecting, did I do something right? Did I do something wrong? I've been up for many different jobs that I interviewed, and I could have done better, and I kind of learned and sharpened your skills and kind of move forward. And I think people with disabilities need to do that a lot more, but they also need to have the opportunities. Think about some ways that the people show up is not prepared, um, don't know the subject really well, and more importantly, talk about things they've accomplished when they didn't, right? The best thing is honesty, being able to lead with that. And I think I bring, and again, if you don't know something, you don't know it, right? And be honest about that and say, hey, you know what? I don't know about that, but I'd like to learn more. And how can I move forward and do that? Because that shows your vulnerability and it shows that your willingness to learn. And I think one of the best things someone can do is mock interviews with the family member, with a friend, with a colleague, right? I'm going up for this job to be Lorene Looney's boss. What should I know? Well, she's kind of wacky, she's kind of fun, she knows what to
Bias against
do,
people with
right?
dads.
Yeah. And also I think it's important for people to realize that they need to do the homework on the job,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
do the research and dive deep into something, right? Like knowing that, knowing that your interviewer and knowing something about that interviewer is important, right? That
Yeah.
you might be able to search on the internet, that something may come up in the conversation that may be part of your alma mater. Right? They might
Yeah.
have went to school with your
Yeah.
brother's sister's uncle's brother's sister's dog. Who knows? But
Exactly.
the
Right.
point
Right.
is, if
Yeah.
you can find that little tidbit and being able to relate that to a person, then that brings personalization to it, and people remember those things. I hear people say, "Oh, you should meet someone where they're at," and if I think about what that means a lot of different things. When I was 23 years old and going to Eastern Paralyzed Veterans Association, I had a whole different idea of what work was compared to what work is now. And I know how to juggle work a lot differently now than I did then and anywhere in between, right? Because of that
Yeah.
experience that you're able to bring. And then there's other people that are coming in that you have to kind of look at when new people come in, and you got to kind of meet where they're at, right? And they may be out in a different
Yeah.
space where you are too. So that's not always easy, but just stepping back, rolling back, thinking about it and saying, oh, well, they didn't accomplish this because they're here. All right, that makes sense, right? And vice versa. Parting words of wisdom. Lead with your disability. Don't be shy about it. You have it. You can't hide it. It's there. Best for people to know what you're bringing to work, and you're bringing a set of skills that nobody is bringing, and you have lived experience that no one else does. And
Yeah.
try to be confident in what you're doing, and do your research.